All right, so you want to then, knowing that it's going to be behaviorally based, you want to format your answer carefully. You want to tell them what happened, what you did, why you did it, and what you learned from it. 4 things. You want to structure your answer.
Say that again, please.
You want to answer it what the situation was, what you did about it, why you did it, and what you learned from that. Because they're also looking for, you're able to learn things from your past mistakes or your successes. You know, if it went well, what did you learn? Well, next time I'll do it that way. The thing that used to annoy me when I was interviewing people is you would ask a question, well, tell me about one time when your biggest weakness really got in the way of your success. And they'll say, weakness, worst time, weakness. And they're thinking out loud and just, you know, in their head, and it gets to be real annoying. If you can't think of something, ask to come back to that question later. To say, you know what, can we come back at the end? For me, I would rather them do that than kind of ramble. And speaking of rambling, you want to be very careful with rambling. Pick up on their cues, on the interviewers. If they start to turn the page or they put their pencil down, it's probably time to stop, to end that question. But you can ask, have I answered your question sufficiently? Because a lot of times they can't cue you, no, you didn't answer it. But if you ask that question, that gives them the opportunity to say, well, can you tell me a little bit more about this? So that's important. The other thing I would recommend, and we are going to go through some sample questions, there's specific topics that people will ask in an interview. One common one is about teamwork. Another one is about your organizational style. Another one is about your work ethic. So what I did to prepare is I came up with several topics, and I tried to come up with 2 or 3 situations in the past that happened that maybe I could use. So I wasn't caught blindsided if they did ask me that. And in fact, at one point, I had those examples with me, and I told them, I said, you know, I was preparing for this. I have a couple of examples. Do you mind if I look? And of course, they don't mind. You're showing that you're prepared. So that's something else that I would recommend. The do's also, so you're going to have a structured answer. You want to be able to cover at least those 4 points without getting into too much minute detail, but enough to give them a good idea of how you performed in the past. The other thing that you want to do is ask them questions. At the beginning, they may say, do you have any questions? I would wait. At the end, they will usually say, now, do you have any questions of us? And, you know, sometimes people say, yeah, well, what is the starting salary? That's not what I want to hear. If I'm interviewing someone, I want a question, an educated question about, tell me about the culture here. What's the decision-making process? What's the organizational chart? Think of something that's going to be relevant and show that you are interested as well. One question I asked was, if I was interviewing with the supervisor, if you and I don't see eye to eye, how would you like for me to let you know? Because I wanted to get a sense of, one, how she prefers to be communicated with, and 2, that she's understanding that I'm willing to jump in there and give it the best go, even if I do disagree. Now, that's not a question I necessarily recommend. I knew the people, so it was a little bit different. But you want to ask about the culture. You want to ask about, tell me what a typical day is going to be like. What is, in the first 6 months, what do you see me doing? What would you like me how would you like for me to progress or succeed? What is the training plan? So well thought out, meaningful questions. You don't want to bring up salary. I mean, if you get the job offer, that's when you can talk about salary. The answering don'ts. I've already talked about a few. You don't want to ramble. It's very important that you pay attention to their body language. You maintain that eye contact. You want to make sure that you're professionally dressed, that everything's zipped and buttoned. You don't have anything distracting going on with your hair or your makeup. Women, you want to scale the makeup down. You want to wear simple jewelry. One set of earrings. You don't want to go crazy.
Probably not too dangly.
Yeah, not dangly, because that can be distracting. Certainly you don't want to chew on your pencil. You don't want to tap your pencil. You want to look like you're in control, that you're confident. You don't want to sit way back in the chair, laid back. You might have your elbows on the table. Women, you don't want to, if there's not a table in front of you, you don't cross your legs.
If you're in a skirt, well, yeah, especially if you're in a skirt. You cross your, you keep your feet on the floor in front of you or to the side, or you can cross at the ankles, but you don't sit like this. Right. And if you're in a skirt that's more than 2 inches above your knee, they won't really take you seriously.
Right. So, Carrick, you watch those skirts and crossing the legs. Okay, so
we've heard about you.
Those are the main don'ts.
I want to say one thing about rambling. Another thing that you really want to avoid, and usually any seminar I have one person that admits to doing this, don't finish the interviewer's sentences with him or her. Aunt Caddy does that. We've got an aunt that does that. And when I talk to someone who's finishing my sentences with me, I stop thinking about what I'm saying and just try to switch up, and thwart the person and, make them mess up, not finish with me. But if you know that you do that, try to stop. Finish someone's sentences with them.
Like, give an example. Last summer, I went to
the beach?
Yeah.
Don't you know someone that's always right there? I've got a doctor that does it. Mm-hmm. Just wants to finish every single sentence with me.
So you want to listen. You don't want to just rush in the answer either. You want to look thoughtful. So once they ask you the question, you're taking down notes, you're doing a mental check of okay, what example have I prepared to give? Pause a second to format it in your head instead of just jumping right in and say, oh yeah, I can tell you just about that.
We teach that at the protocol school. They say think before you speak, and it doesn't mean in the spirit of not putting your foot in your mouth. It's in the spirit of looking like you're thinking about it. You come across seeming kind of wise and thoughtful and deliberate, and I immediately thought of Mr. Parcells at Georgia Southern. I had a professor that did this. When you talk to him, every now and then he would pause for a minute before he spoke, and he just seemed so smart. So that's a good point. Yeah, don't just jump right in there, and it's okay to have a pause and silence.
Now, I've listed some common, not questions, but categories of questions that you may see, and we're going to practice this in just a little bit. But they're certainly going to ask you somewhere about your accomplishments. They're going to say, tell me about yourself. Usually that's the warm-up. Well, tell me about yourself. They're not wanting you to go back to childhood or talk about your hobbies. They want to know about your education, your experiences. That's why it's important to know your resume and that format and the order and be brief and make it relevant to the job. The problem solving, they'll ask you maybe a problem solving question. Tell me about a time that you had a very complicated situation and you had to engage 3 other people to help resolve it. That's just an example. Your leadership. Tell me about a time you had to lead a team, a new team, and they weren't getting along. Certainly teamwork. That's a big one now. Everyone needs to be able to work in teams. And you could even ask I was going to say you could ask a qualifying question. Well, what type of teamwork are you meaning? Because you've got like cyberspace teamwork, and you've got meeting team, face-to-face, so there's different types of teamwork. Your organization and management skills. How do you handle workloads? How do you prioritize? How do you deal with stress? Tell me of a time that you had so many things going on that you thought you were going to have to ask for help. I don't know, something like that. Your strengths and your weaknesses. And you've heard this before, you want to turn your weaknesses into a positive. I don't want to hear that someone is absolutely great they have no problems at all, I'm thinking that they are not being very honest. I do want to hear about what they're doing about that weakness. So when I went into my interviews, the question came up, what is something that you need to work on? I tend to not want to process too much. I'd rather take a risk, make a decision, move on, and then come back and do damage control. A lot of times that works for me, but sometimes it doesn't. And so what I'm trying to do is stand back a little bit, think, and get feedback from other people. So it's okay. So think about it. If they ask you that question, what are you going to say? Here's some more. Your communication style, integrity, what that means to you, your interpersonal skills. Tell us about a time that you had to work with someone you didn't care for. Your motivation and initiative. Tell us about a time that you went above and beyond the call of duty. And that's something that I would be prepared for that one. Your work ethic, flexibility, adaptability, and your computer skills. These are just examples. And so when I went into the interview, I picked 5 or 6 of these, especially motivation and initiative, the leadership, and I had 3 examples that I could pull from, anticipating those types of questions. All right. Up to this point, this is the information that we have for you to start practicing some of these skills. Do you have any questions at this point? Thanks for joining us for this seminar on professional etiquette and interviewing. Hopefully the skills and tips you learned will give you the advantage to outclass your competition in job searching situations. If you have any further questions, contact Meagan Palmer at Mecklenburg County Human Resources, 704-432-0019.